Welcome back. We're in season 2 of Life Unfiltered. I'm here today with Leah Garza, Akashic reader, and you have a healing practice here in LA. Yes. I got introduced to you by a friend of mine. She said, I have to call you. No details about what you did, which is fine because we're going to tell the people today.
Yeah.
But we had such an exceptional call. Mm-hmm. I came back twice because I couldn't stay away. I love your process. I love what you have to say. I found the whole Akashic reading so transformational for me that I wanted to introduce you to my community and sort of have them learn about you and what you do.
Thank you.
So we'll start with, what are Akashic records?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's such a special treat. The Akashic records are, it's so esoteric and I try to make it so practical, but they're a dimension of consciousness that we can go to through prayer, through kind of like a meditative state. And what we're trying to do is access the wisdom of the soul. So the soul is this eternal, vast, kind of like receptacle of all of our information, of all of our lifetimes, everything we've ever experienced. And the readings and the sessions I do with my clients are really to help people who are in this current moment feeling stuck around limiting beliefs or patterns or traumas. And so we go into the Akashic records to kind of, see if there is pertinent information that can help us shift our current moment. I know it sounds super kind of out there, spiritual, but I think the best use of it is to ground it and make it practical and useful for our lives like today.
That's what we did on the call.
Yeah.
So Jews believe in like soul reincarnation, that your soul kind of gets you could be a plant, you could come back as a human. Is that sort of what like the Akashic records are, like all your past souls' lives?
100%. So from this perspective, from the Akashic perspective, the soul chooses different iterations for different lifetimes because those particular iterations might allow us to have some kind of lesson or growth for the expansion of our consciousness, for the expansion of our soul. So we might, you're exactly right. We might choose to be a flower in one lifetime.
I would.
Me too. A butterfly.
Yeah.
We might choose to be, whoever, we're choosing to be who we are right now for that exact reason.
Right.
Yeah, it's right.
I love that. That is super cool.
Yeah.
So what's the process to becoming an Akashic reader? Is there like a training? Is there a boot camp you could go to? What does it look like?
I love that question because, we're in LA. LA is a hub of spiritual activity and, practitioners. There's a huge community here and there's a lot of gatekeeping of who can access these modalities. And I love the Akashic records because anyone can do it and everyone can do it. I personally chose to be trained through the Linda Howe lineage. Linda Howe is a current, widely known teacher. Her work is really famous. And so I studied with her. I've studied with other teachers. But that really has to do with my personal, I think, I like to study. So I chose to do a lot of study.
Yeah.
But you can literally get her book at a bookstore, read it, and it tells you how to do it yourself and begin your practice that way.
I have a bunch more questions about the process. But tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, where'd you grow up? What were you like as a kid? Give us a little insight into Leah.
Right. I grew up in San Diego. I'm from San Diego. I have lived kind of all over the place, but I moved to LA to go to UCLA. I have a really long background teaching and education. I was a classroom teacher. So I didn't come from like a spiritual family. This is not like a natural, doing Akashic work wasn't like an easy jump for me. It was actually pretty difficult. I don't want to say difficult, but it wasn't an organic.
See, that surprises me because you seem like so, I would imagine that you'd come from a spiritual family. And
no, I came from a very not, but my mom was raised Catholic and made like this decision to not raise us in the church because
Whoa.
She had her experience with it, I don't know. They're great, but we just weren't raised with a lot of, spirituality. And I would say that I actually am a lifelong skeptic, which is also kind of funny. I know.
None of this, this is so, I'm caught off guard by that.
Well, so.
Skeptic in what way?
That I want credible sources to vet the information that I internalize as true.
Yeah.
And which is very funny because when people get into a session with me, I'm asking them to really believe in the etheric, believe in the invisible.
Yeah.
But I would say my path really took a really sharp turn. I was teaching in South LA and my school closed abruptly. And I've never not worked in my life. I've always worked. And I, could not for the life of me even get an interview at that time for teaching. And then I moved into just nonprofit work and nobody was hiring. And so at the same time, I started kind of dabbling in these classes that I thought might be fun. Just I wasn't taking them seriously.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where being a 9-to-5 person working a job was just not happening. I was a month away from losing my apartment. I was, my phone was hard to keep on. It was at that moment. And I kept getting these green lights, invited to do Akashic work or just, people really interested in doing that kind of work with me. But I kept resisting it for, that's just a hobby. That's so silly. And I really had a turning point where I really let go of the idea of trying to work because it just wasn't happening. And it was as soon as I let go, everything about my personal business just kind of came into full bloom. And it was telling me to have some faith. And so I really opened up to it at that point and really started doing my own Akashic work,
I was just going to ask, can one read their own?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. And at this point, I built my current business, my career kind of around reading other people, but I'm really, really invested and interested in getting people to learn how to read their own records and to learn that kind of transformational perspective that the records have to offer us. Because I just imagine if you have a good experience with me in a reading, imagine if that's just the space you lived in every day. Imagine if you could do that for yourself every day. And I think people can.
After we had our reading, I thought to myself, I'd love to introduce everybody I know to this. Followed quickly by, my friends are just not going to believe that this is real. And I'm going to be fully honest with you. I hesitated even about asking you to come here because I think a lot of my community will be well, this is not traditionally the way, but I feel truth is it's so apparent when you're in a space of truth and realness and authenticity and that there's truth being spoken. And it was undeniable in our readings, the clarity and the things that we spoke about. So I hope people listening do really open their minds to a new, because I had never heard of Akashic.
Yeah.
A lot of people have not.
I hadn't either before I took my first class even.
So I hope that, we have to educate people.
I like what you're saying, but I also fully respect where people are in their doubt. I don't even, people very often want to buy can I get a gift certificate for my friend because I want them to have a session with you. And I kind of reject that because I have full faith that the people who will resonate with this work will find it, whether it's through me or through another practitioner. Right. And that some folks are going to, I don't like the judgment that comes with the word ready, but some people are going to be ready for it and some people won't.
Right.
And, I send love and compassion to everyone. Right. I have to respect that journey too.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready before I was ready. And
right.
you couldn't have told me otherwise too. So I respect that.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Yeah.
I mean, you answered my question. Was there something impactful that happened? So I guess you lost the career that you were doing for the longest time.
Yes. Yeah.
That's how I catapulted into this.
Yeah.
my job was no longer.
We just can't plan these things with our minds.
I know.
And so like for people that are skeptical of the Akashic records, that's totally fine. What I do wish for people is that they could have faith that they're supported. And whatever that faith is, that like the thing that you most want to do in your heart, it also wants you to do it.
Yeah.
It's not just like something that you want from your ego.
Right.
And so like, I hope that people can find the faith to take that step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was not, I wasn't going to ask you this, but you told me in one of our readings that I'm unique, but I'm not special. That hit me like such a ton of bricks. A, because I think I'm so special.
Yeah.
I mean, not anymore now, actually. That was like so important. Do you have to say that to people often, or was that specific for me?
I don't actually remember our session.
Oh, I do.
Of course.
You told me that.
I know.
You were like,
Yeah.
you said the Akashic records
Yeah.
want you to know that you're unique, but you're not special.
Yeah. And I can tell you exactly what that means too. What that means is that you are the center of the universe. You are exactly perfectly you, but that doesn't place you in a hierarchy with other people. And I think in our culture, we're inherently put into a hierarchy of, you know, can you get, starting in childhood, can you get the best grades? Do you have the most friends? You know, like all of our social media is based on hierarchy, who has the most followers and likes, you know. So that hierarchy keeps us chasing something that will never be fulfilled. We will never be the best because the best is a fiction. And I know this because I've spent, you know, my life chasing things that were never, ever going to be met. But then what the Akashic records really want us to see is that take all that out, take that hierarchy out, because you're missing the point that you are exactly perfect for this world. And then it's like, from there, it's like, oh, I can relax. I don't need to be in competition. I don't need to, you know, be comparing myself. I can truly enjoy this experience and do the things in this life that I'm meant to do.
Yeah. That's especially hard. Like, you're right. Like today, and in the digital world, I think that's so hard.
Yeah. I mean, in our families and our communities, you know, being the best at something is so attached to acceptance and love in our culture. And so I think that's one thing, that's something that I wish everyone could know, whether you come to the records or not, that you are inherently unconditionally loved and perfect and don't need to change to be loved.
Could you give us like a short kind of like, what could one expect if they were to call you? Like, what does a call with you look like?
Yeah. So I generally ask first-time people to book a half hour with me.
Okay.
Anything more, we can be like kind of grasping for straws, or it could be like too much for a longer reading. I ask people in general to come with a list of questions or stories or things that you want clarity on.
Okay.
It's not the kind of, well, at least for me, I'm not the kind of reader that can responds well when people are like, I don't know, just tell me what they have to say. It really opens up and becomes more robust when you have a situation you want to talk about. I definitely ask people to understand that this isn't a psychic reading.
Right.
So if you want facts or answers, I'm probably not your girl.
Right. But in many ways you do provide, but it's not in the way that people will imagine. Do this, don't do this.
Right. Yeah.
You did provide clarity, which is an answer in a lot of ways.
I hope that comes through. I also make a point of never telling clients what to do because I don't know you better than you know yourself.
Right.
I'm a stranger to people that come to me, and I want so much for people to trust their own intuition around what to do. I feel like really good readings should just affirm what you already know or give you a little bit of permission to like take that courageous step in what you already want to do. If you're totally shocked by a reader, then that is maybe an indication there's some like fallacies going on there.
Yeah, or that maybe you're not self-aware.
Totally. Yeah.
It could be one of two things.
Yeah. And if a reading makes you feel bad, that is definitely an indication that that's not right to me. Like the records are such a loving modality that we can deal with very deep, dark topics from a perspective of love and compassion.
That beautifully leads me into my next question, which is, have you ever, and do you ever have you ever had to give over some very difficult information to somebody? And then what do you do? Like, what is...
Yeah. Well, one of the things that being a practitioner of this modality has helped me do is be able to read people's comfort with a certain topic.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I ask people to do is to trust their own body as a kind of tuning fork for how information is landing with them. So if there is something really deep that's coming to me and I'm like, oh, this person is not ready for this, I might say, I'm going to say something and I want you to tell me what this feels like in your body when you hear it. We're not judging whether it's true or not true. We're just assessing, what does that feel like? And when somebody hears something that maybe that is very difficult and they're like, I feel that.
Right.
So without having to say straight on, this is the truth for you.
Right.
We can say like, okay, there's some resonance here.
Got it.
Something resonates. And if it resonates, I want to help you feel confident in honoring that. Because I think a lot of what happens and a lot of the reasons why we go to readers is because we get into situations where we have a very specific response to something, but everyone around us has told us that's not right, don't respond that way, you're overreacting. And so we push this stuff down. And in that process, we don't honor ourselves. And those things don't go away. They just stay there.
The body holds score or whatever
exactly. The body holds the score. Exactly. And so I think that's a big part. The truth about us is a tenuous thing. It can change. But our ability to have courage to say, this is absolutely what I'm experiencing and how do I tend to it? That is something that I want people to feel confident in.
I love that. How do you refuel? Because I imagine this is an energy draining, not draining, I'm going to channel, but you have to channel a lot of energy with people.
It's actually, that's not the hard part. Reading the records for me is very regenerative.
Okay.
It's just opening the records, it is a full body experience for me. It's very loving. I don't know how to explain it to people. It's loving. Sometimes I don't know. I start crying because I'm so in love with the person that I'm reading.
What? That is amazing.
It's really cool. And going back to previous Leah, the skeptic, the teacher in Watts, like Leah doesn't cry.
Right.
So I know that something is moving through me. I think the part that is draining is having a business.
Yeah. I could see that.
I limit.
Like marketing yourself.
Oh my God.
Self-promote. Well, that's why I'm going to do it for you.
Please. I need all the help I can get.
Why do you feel that? Because you're just deeply spiritual, you just don't want to be focusing on the dollars and cents? Or not?
No.
I know you're not even deeply spiritual, you're a skeptic, but I mean, just like you want to be doing the readings.
I'm both. I think it's because I just I'm just not, I did not come to LA like camera ready.
Right.
I came here to be a teacher. I had no intention of putting my face on social media. Like that turn propelled me into that world. And so that to me it's draining. I think I've come to kind of enjoy it, but like all of the just running a business. It's not, and I know some people love it. It feels so exciting.
Yeah.
And that's just
I would love to talk to them.
I know, me too.
Yeah. You must be an empath to some degree. Can you turn it on and off? Like, can you turn it off when you're like, I do not, because do you feel things coming to you when you're not, or do you only sense things when you have to open up the records?
That's a good question. I would actually say that at this point, I think every human being is an empath.
Right, yeah.
And I think that...
Well, not sociopaths.
But I don't know.
What is your view on sociopaths? Or not narcissists? Like they're not empaths.
Well, I think the experiences of trauma that we have in our early childhood, and then also experiences in our ancestry of trauma that we hold in our bodies, forces us to cope in ways that we are not organic to our soul. And I think so. Narcissism is like a coping strategy. It can be really damaging for you and the people around you and your relationships. But I mean, and this is like an Akashic principle, is that like everyone is only ever seeking love. And so we're going to try to meet those needs with the languages and the tools that we know. And I think for some people, they don't have access to better tools that are more healthy for relationships and for well-being.
So how do you navigate that? Like, what if someone's just like so awful to deal with in your life? What do you recommend?
If someone's so awful to deal with in my
No,
life.
because like I have friends that were married to narcissists or have very difficult personalities, like with parents or spouses, and like, any advice?
I don't have advice for other people, but I can say for my own life, I think that I have had this is a place where I am actively working on. I have like an idealized image of someone that I love. Like, oh, if you just did this, it would be so much easier for you. Just do this thing. And when I do that, I realize that I am absolutely ignoring that person's agency. I'm ignoring that person's choice. I'm imposing my will on someone else's life. And that just never works out for me.
Yeah.
It might work out for other people. I haven't seen anyone.
No, it doesn't.
But
spoiler alert.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. So yeah, and I've learned that, the hard way. Like I lost a friend to suicide who was giving me all the information, and I refused to believe that was the end of that person's life. I refused to see it, and then it was a shock to me. So it's not to say that if I just accepted it and we do nothing and let this person go, but I really, really was erasing what this person was trying to tell me because I wanted to see her the way I wanted to see her.
Yeah.
And I think we do that a lot with people who are narcissistic. And it's difficult to see what's underneath narcissism when that person is hurting you. But I really have this firm belief that people behave and are motivated through their unconscious unmet needs. And the Akashic Records helps us, at least it helps me and it helps my clients get to finding those needs, because sometimes we're just so not aware of what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever not been able to read someone's record?
Totally.
What happens?
In general, there have been a few situations. Some have been because I've just been so tired. Sometimes it's been because the person I'm reading they say they want to do this, but they're actually terrified.
Yeah. So the person's energy and response in the call is as important. Like they have to really, like when you're closing your eyes and you're saying that little prayer.
The prayer,
It's so important that person really be present and be like, no, I'm a willing and able and ready participant in this with you.
Yeah, and that's part of why I don't recommend people buy a reading for their friend, because you might want this thing so much for them, but if they're a little bit afraid or if this is too weird for them, that can really be a block to having a good experience.
What do you say when you can't read?
I generally am like, I just tell the truth. I'm having a really hard time receiving. I'd like to end the reading and we can come back to it, or I can refund you, or, but I don't want to pretend.
Yeah. Do you always tell the truth? Always, no matter what?
No. Oh my God. Like in my life? No.
Like, I'm like, do you do the right thing always?
No. I mean, like, no, I'm still a person.
Right, okay.
But I mean, I want to have integrity when it comes to this work, because there are so many charlatans.
Yeah.
And I come from being a teacher and trying to like change systems and wanting, working for justice. And like, so in this realm, I don't want to do anything that would further a bad reputation or mistrust in that way.
I wrote this kind of funny, and now knowing you a little better, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to ask it in this way. So I wrote,
just say it.
This is so
it's
negative.
Okay.
I was like at a dinner party last weekend, and somebody said, you say hate all the time. You use the word hate all the time. And I'm like, oh, and I had to really look at myself and I acknowledge that I do use the word hate, so I'm not using that anymore. But I said, what are 3 major like deficiencies you see in society these days?
Oh man.
But I don't know if I now know you're not gonna want to call. Or can you talk about you speak to a lot of people. I feel like you have a little bit more of an awareness around you.
Yeah.
What are some big deficiencies, or maybe not deficiencies, what do you think are some things that humans are starting to maybe lose a little bit that we need to bring back?
Yeah, Adele, you are speaking to my heart. I'm aside from this, I'm a PhD student, and I study community liberation, indigenous, and eco-psychology.
I'm getting so into that now. We're going to have, I would literally talk to you just about that.
So we study everything from a decolonial perspective. And it is, having spent, a lifetime really looking at the way, my family is, I'm half Mexican, I'm half white. The ways that my family has been impacted by racism, by poverty, by structural oppression, and then going into schools in low-income communities that are all Black and brown students, and seeing the ways that the structures really keep most of those students. LA at one point had a 51% dropout rate.
My God.
In urban schools. And that's structural. So I don't think it just ends with the structures. We come to internalize those messages of deficiency, of poverty, of being withheld from resources. And I think, I was reflecting on it, just even when you're emailing me coming here, and I've never, I'm totally down for this, but I've never been told what to wear.
Oh my God, I was only just saying,
but no,
prints don't do so well.
Oh my gosh, no, I'm totally okay with it. Yeah. But it started making me think about just how I show up, beauty standards, how beauty standards tear you down.
Yeah.
I just started to think about how that becomes a part of the internal person, but that's really a structural thing.
Right.
So I could just go on forever.
I hope I didn't offend you.
Not at all.
Okay, good.
No, not at all.
Because sometimes I have guests that come and they're like, "Oh, did I wear?" And it's too late. So now I just have a checklist.
No, it's not at all, because it's also the language of the business of what we're doing right now. Right. It requires that. So I'm so down for that. And I didn't feel a judgment or anything from you at all. But it just made me reflect on I don't go into spaces where that's required of me that often. Right. And it just made me start thinking about how do people see me? How do you, and how do I internalize that? What kind of fears do I hold? And how none of that is organic to our soul. None of that is who we are. That is all taught to us. So
I guess the three deficiencies you're going to say, one, racism.
I would say colonialism is the start of it all.
Yeah.
The idea that, at some point, some people believe they have the right to just go and take over lands and people.
Yeah.
And pretend they're not even here. And we see it I have had students that are, lived in the same house for multiple generations, and then it's sold because they're going to put it in a coffee shop. And then those actual students become homeless.
Oh my God.
And so it's not a thing of the past. It's something that happens right now.
Oh yeah.
It's we call colonialism a hydra because it has so many arms and tentacles, and racism is one and capitalism is another, and the beauty standards and white supremacy. I mean, we could go on and on.
Yeah.
It's so all inclusive.
Yeah.
And so I guess the thing that I wish people could bring back in light of how big and heavy that issue is I think the compassion.
Yeah.
Really understanding that every single person here is trying to do the best they can under the weight of this system. Even people that have a lot of money or people that have a lot of privilege, everyone still is trying to be acceptable here. Yeah. Everyone here is. And compassion gets us so far. It takes us so far in building the bridges and building, just relationships so that we don't feel like we're these silos alone in our lives. Yeah.
I love that. I've been working on that.
It's hard.
This year has been, I think, emotional for a lot of people because racism has been a theme.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
This year.
Yeah.
And everybody feels like it affects their own kind the most.
Yeah.
But I actually had a paradigm shift in my thinking this year that actually I don't believe my people have had it the worst.
Yeah.
And that was huge for me. So, and that's when I started to get, I'm now much more interested in talking to other races that have been oppressed and learning more, because it's not to say my people haven't.
Yeah.
We do and I.
It's hard. But also, what I would also say is going back to that concept of taking away hierarchies. You're unique but not special.
Yes.
Imagine if we didn't even try to compare oppressions. you know.
Even in my oppression, Carrie, I'm
sorry.
No, it's true. You're right. That was a good call out.
We all do it.
It's
we
so true.
all do it. And it makes it incredibly difficult to ever tend to the multiple wounds that are happening in our society, because we're constantly weighing who needs the care first, who deserves it more, who has it worse.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we should not do that. I'm just throwing that out there that like, what if we didn't compare?
Right. No, I love that. That's true. My very last question, I think this is such a good way to end. What are some ways that people could get more in touch with the universe, more in touch with themselves? Some ways they could start?
I love this question. I love this question because it's actually so simple. And my answer, and this is something I've been working on for years now with the records, is teaching people to listen to what is resonant for them. Like, we don't need to know all the things.
Right.
We don't have to have a crazy meditation practice. We don't need to be especially trained in something. Those are great. I'm not saying people don't do it, but what is the most potent is knowing what resonates with you. And what resonates doesn't mean what's, brings you joy versus what you hate, but like
self-care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But like, what is a yes and what is a no?
Okay.
And then how do you actively ignore your yeses and override your nos?
Okay.
Basically, how do you ignore your boundaries constantly? Listening to what resonates is like, you don't have to, it's going to defy logic. You don't have to explain it in your mind. It may not make sense to you. It may go against the story that you have about yourself completely. But I want to make this promise, which is like so heavy to say a promise, but like, I want to say that if you go in the direction of what is resonant, you are guided onto the path of more yourself. Like, people come to me constantly to ask about, what's my purpose? What's this? How do I get this? How do I find abundance? How do I live abundantly? And I want to throw all those words out. And I want to just be like, come back into your body and feel what feels like a yes. You know it because you've probably met people that are like, I like you. I don't know why, but I like you.
Yeah.
And you've probably met people that are like, I don't know why, but
That's an immediate no.
do not like you. Hard pass. Yeah. And that feeling, really getting comfortable with that feeling and then starting to apply that to everything. Like, I know that my life changed because I was struggling to get a job for those years, and I started to kind of feel like I maybe didn't want to go back to teaching, but I was too afraid to assert that because who do I think I am?
Course,
Someone doesn't have to work? And so I started to make these like deals with myself. Like, okay, well, if I get a job that's part-time, but full-time pay, then I'll do it. And I got it. I got offered what I wanted, and it made my stomach turn.
Yeah.
And so with like no money in my bank, I listened to what was resonant and I said no. And by the end of that year, like 2 months later, I was like bawling out of control. I mean, I was like floating in money. My business had grown.
Oh my God. I want to high five you for that. Yes.
I know. But it took that leap of faith that saying no to something that feels so out of alignment with me is the right decision, even though all of the material world, my family, my upbringing, society, my debt collectors are telling me have a job. Yeah. And so I'm not telling people to just don't go quit your job. But
no, really don't. No.
You got to use, but do use what's resonant.
Yeah.
Do make decisions from resonance. And it can start out small with like, what do I want to eat for breakfast? My gosh, I think it's time to leave my partner. You could be small decisions, big decisions, but.
I love that. I love that.
Thank you.
If people want to get in touch with you or find out more, where can they find you? Yes, you can visit my website, crystalsofaltamira.com. I'm also on Instagram at crystalsofaltamira. And I'll tag all that. Okay, cool. And also people are like, what is this? And I'm like, just consider it a business name. Like, I get emails all the time like, Dear Crystal. And I'm like, it's just a business name. Yeah. My name is Leah. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this and being here. I just, it was so fun. I just think you're awesome. I think what you're doing is awesome. I think you're awesome too. Thank you. Cool.